would like to convince everyone of the idea that we need to stop being so domineering with our environment, but I want to dominate the predominant paradigm so that it becomes more harmonious, so it's like, of course I don't necessarily have that power to do that. What I do have the power to do is to be real with myself about how am I interacting in the world.
Hey, you a dreamer?
Thanks for tuning into the ReMinders podcast. So I just had a very fun and beautiful conversation with my new friend Jake. This is someone that I met through the Very Ape Discord community. If you're not familiar, Very Ape is another podcast. I've mentioned them before in the podcast, but if you aren't familiar, they're filmmakers. They just put out a new documentary. I guess it's been 6 months, but they just put out a version of it where they're doing commentary of it. That was super cool. Anyway, the documentary is about the hippie bestie scene, giving some representation to that. It's really cool. They're the type of documentary makers where they're not like creating a narrative around what they're showcasing. They literally just bring cameras and mics and document something. So super cool. Highly recommend it. A lot of it was filmed here in Ohio. A lot of it was at the Nelson Ledges Quarry Park, which happens to be my favorite festival venue. So anyway, we were chatting on that forum about dreams and dream work, and we decided that it'd be fun to try to make a podcast about us just sharing notes on our approaches to dream interpretation. So I share a dream and he does his approach for interpreting it, and he shares a dream and I walk him through what I call, or what is called, dream interviewing. And I think we both thoroughly enjoyed it and definitely got something out of each other's approach. Very different approaches for sure. His is an intuitive approach, and I don't know, I was very impressed by how he was able to sort of read my dream back to me in a interpretation that honestly did resonate. I'm usually pretty reserved or resistant towards other people interpreting my dreams or people interpreting other people's dreams, generally speaking, because I feel, and what I've been taught, is that dreams are such a personal thing, and that the symbolism in it is personal. It's our personal relationship to the subconscious mind communicating to us through symbols that would only really make sense through our personal associations. Anyway, that's all kind of explained in the process that he and I do together. Throwing it out there, I do offer this as one of the handful of services that I offer. So if you're ever presented with a particularly vivid or resonant or alarming or a big dream that you are just dying to know what the message from your deeper self may be, then feel free to hit me up. I'll walk you through the dream interpretation. I'll walk you through the dream interview, and honestly, it's a fun process. Everyone that I've done it with has gotten something out of it, and to be quite honest, I get something out of every dream interview that I engage with. It's almost like I get to secondhand experience and extract the value and wisdom that comes out of other people's dreams as well. So it's super cool, and I would like to do more dream interviewing, so definitely hit me up if you're into that. I mentioned Discord. Definitely come check us out and join the conversation on Discord. As you can see through this episode, connections do happen on the internet, and I would love to see more of that flourish in our personal Discord server. So I'll leave the link for that in the comments. And it was just a really fun conversation. We definitely were fast friends, and I'm sure we'll talk again and hopefully make more podcasts out of it. So let's dive on in.
I've had a super interesting relationship with dreams for a lot of my life, I feel, because I started accidentally lucid dreaming when I was really young, like 6 or 7 years old, and it was so I always, like, from a really young age, I was connected with my dreams, and I would every now and then just, again, like, accidentally, like, lucid dream and start to fly and stuff. I kept getting, like, further and further into that world. I'm like, wow, I can use, like, my mind to have, like, fun, and it was just weird, but And I'd remember my dreams pretty much every night through like my childhood and teenage years. And
Nice.
everyone's probably heard you start smoking weed and you start forgetting your dreams. So it's a little more spotty now that I'm a huge stoner, but I
Gotcha.
still like with the intention of the dream work. Like since I started doing this, I want to say as a practice, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, like very like in a committed way. Like the dream journal does actually like help me remember my dreams every single night, which has been cool. So I guess you could say it's been more of like a steady practice for about 3 months.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Sort of getting back into documenting them and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'll echo what you said. I definitely feel similar that just the act of keeping a dream journal has definitely, you know, resulted in more dream recall for me. I guess it's just one of those things, you prime your brain. Like if you're doing like a gratitude journal or whatever, and you're going to give yourself this little task at the end of the day or beginning of the day or whatever, you're going to be sort of like primed to look for more things to be grateful for. Or you're going to be more mindful or literally conscious of your dreams if you know that you have this practice that you want to have something to write down.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The intention with anything, like exactly what you said. Before I did the dreaming, I definitely had the gratitude journal. And that's just kind of like basic to my experience now, I guess. I find myself like really just being grateful in situations where everyone's like, why are you just sitting there being grateful for the simple stuff? I'm like, I don't know. That's how I've just trained myself now. So now
Yeah.
it feels kind of regular. I still will write in the journal.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, it's where attention goes, energy flows, as my yoga teacher from YouTube says.
Yeah. That's a good one for sure. That's a good one to remember. Perfect way of encapsulating what I was saying. Yeah, absolutely. So what's your process of working with the dreams once you write them down? Like, is it just very intuitive, or you said you have somewhat of a process?
Yeah, so the process I'm learning, it's a Kabbalistic process, which is a mystical tradition, the Kabbalah. So I'm kind of studying this book called the Kabbalah of Light, which gives kind of a structure to the dream interpretation. Because I feel like when you go into it, you don't really know what you're looking at or for. Like a lot of people like to use like symbology or like certain like specific dream interpretations. This one focuses more on, like you said, kind of just it's more about just like looking for patterns in
Okay.
the dream and kind of going above. Like it's intuitive was the word I was looking for that I forgot. It's a very intuitive process of like, what does the dream mean to you specifically? What are the patterns in the dream and how can you realize that those patterns are calling to you from your subconscious because they're patterns in your waking life, and you're kind of like meshing the two, like, oh wow, I really do think about this. And the ultimate goal is to have like a free flowing energy and to not really have any like stress dreams at all whatsoever. Like every dream you have basically is a union dream or a Assad dream, I think it's called in the Kabbalah. I'm going to mess the Hebrew words up, but basically the goal is like to have a dream of like pure white light. So you're essentially analyzing every pattern and like hang up you have in your ordinary life that keeps you from having a pure white light experience in waking and asleep.
Gotcha. Wow. Super cool. Yeah, that's super deep.
Yeah, I've been loving this practice so far. And I guess what that looks like practically is like you write the dream down, whatever it is, whatever details there are. And then there are 4 stages that you look for, which is the story of the dream, the pattern of the dream, the question the dream is trying to resolve. And then the last part is called the secret or the treasure of the dream, which means like after you've done all the analysis, if you have that aha moment of like, oh, that's what it was, then you consider like you've gotten the key from the dream. So I'll just write
Gotcha.
the dream down, like look at all the like the overarching pattern of the story, like the real world details they say are not so important, like what street you were on or like what clothes the person was wearing. It's a very intuitive, like more overarching process looking at like the archetypes and repeating themes, both in the container of the dream itself and where you can notice like repeating themes that happen in your own life. And then you kind of look at them, pick them apart. And then from what I can tell you practically is like once you start doing this, and then the book recommends like an active imagination process of like if there was a problem in your life or in the dream, you imagine yourself doing the thing that you know is like the resolution to it. And then when it actually comes up in your life, I find myself doing the resolution part. And it's a really like interesting way to move energy and clear patterns out. And I can't recommend it more highly.
Nice. Nice. Wow. So how long does that process take for you to go through one dream and sort of decode it in that way? Is it something you're able to do just kind of
Um,
like in a sitting?
yeah, you can definitely do it in a sitting. Like I could, because ultimately, unless you're like really looping on something or stuck on something, you pretty much know your own psyche pretty well. And if you're setting the intention to do dream work or like imagination work, you're probably willing to look at what you'd consider like your uglier sides, I guess. But I can do it in like, let's say like 15 minutes. I can just sit there and like analyze it. Okay, this was this, that was that, and then feel kind of that aha moment. But where I
Gotcha.
realize like where I feel like I'm getting stuck is the parts where I'm most tied to my own identity. And I'm like, oh, well, if I get rid of this pattern, I don't know who I am, which is kind of a weird thing
Mm,
to think. Like you're looking at a pattern that's keeping you stuck and giving you problems and giving you like anxiety dreams. But you're like, oh, that's such a fundamental part of who I thought I was. Like, that's where it might take days for me to really feel like I've gotten to the point of something. I was when the dream's touching something very deep, which is why I do the work. But I guess the quicker way to answer that question would be it depends on how deep the pattern is, but generally pretty quickly.
gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, I was recently, like, just within the last year or two, I was taught this type of dream interpretation that's a process. It's usually done between two people. You can do, like, I
Yeah.
have done it solo through journaling and stuff. But honestly, it takes like a lot more discipline to do it
Mm-hmm.
solo because it's not as fun, and it takes carving out some time and attention to like actually doing the process. But I've
Yeah.
gotten, like you said, you do kind of get more familiar with your patterns and with your symbols and stuff like that. So I've
Yeah.
gotten a little bit quicker. It's become a little bit more of a smooth process for me as I've been practicing it. But yeah, it's called dream interviewing, and essentially you're identifying each key symbol that comes up in the dream. So sort of in contrast to what you said, that like, did you call them real world details? Like the color of someone's shirt,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Right.
So you were saying that that's not so important. Contextually, I could agree with that as well. But this modality does sort of read into like basically that everything in the dream is symbolic of something.
Right.
So it's just a matter of like how deep do you really want to dig into identifying and decoding every single symbol. So usually you pick like the primary like
Mm-hmm.
biggest symbols, and yeah, and essentially you just work through this process of asking the right questions to figure out what that represents in your current life. So I could give you an example, but I thought this might be fun. What would you think about if you had a dream that you wanted to share with me? I could walk you through the dream interview process. And have you ever guided someone through your process? Maybe I could tell you a dream and you could sort of walk me through how I would go about decoding that.
Yeah, I've guided someone through it once, and it was pretty interesting, the experience, because it becomes very intuitive. Like I know there's definitely symbol sets, and like you said, I don't want to discount that everything is important, but the specific thing that I work with just seeks to like move energy into a more conscious, like it just seeks to like go like rise energy up to kind of like a Godhead source thing. But and that's usually seen as having like very small details be unimportant as an overarching theme. But the small details, if it's something that you're focusing on, is a very big part of it. Like if the color of somebody's shirt is a pretty central part of the dream, that would not be considered unimportant. But if the way the person is treating you is more of your focus than the color of their shirt, like it's kind of considered getting lost to just focus on the color of their shirt because the way that they were interacting with you was what was really making you uncomfortable. So you'd rather think of the shirt. Like it's a very subtle process, as you can tell. But
That makes sense.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
open to whatever. I don't have a particular dream in mind that I can share. Like I will look through my dream journal and share one if you'd like. But if you had something on the top of your head, I can walk my process first, and then I'll
Sure.
find something for you.
Yeah, let's do that. Just in prep, I cracked open my dream journal, and literally the last one I wrote down, I think would be pretty cool to talk about. This was just last week. So when I was in grade school, from kindergarten through 8th grade, I went to a private Catholic school that had a church, like a part of its, campus or whatever. So I was at that old church or slash school, and I go to the kindergarten room, and I'm looking for an old yearbook in there to find what year it was, which is pretty bizarre. I don't know for what, and I don't find it, and have this like kind of weird feeling of like, why am I in this fucking kindergarten room right now? Like, I'm a grown-ass adult. Like, of course there's going to be no like evidence that I was a student here at some point or whatever. So I'm having that like weird thought or whatever. So then I go into the back of the church, and there's this like just back room. It's like a waiting room or whatever. And I see Trey Anastasia in there. Do you know who that is?
No, who's that?
He's the lead from the band Fish, which is not a band that I've like ever seen or ever really listened to. I mean, I know they're like prominent in the jam band scene for sure, but it was kind of weird that he was the symbol that was here. Anyway, so I run into Trey Anastasia, and he's looking a little miffed. Like, he just doesn't look like he's in a good mood. And it sort of had the feel that he was like a teacher at this school. And so I try to strike up a conversation with him, and he gives me like this little mini lesson. And he's saying, if you're feeling like physically not your best, or if you're like nursing an injury or whatever, that it's best to not just practice the same old stuff over and over, but to just mix it up. And he says sometimes when he's playing solo, he'll just start by building a beat and then just improv from there. And I ask if he like beatboxes like into a mic, or if he like taps on his guitar. Just stupid details right here, man. But and he taps on his guitar. Okay, so anyway, so then I leave that room, and I know there's like a group waiting for me. I guess at this point I'm like back in school, and like there was a class that was waiting for me, and I'm like late to the class or whatever. And I go in there, and I'm late. The only other person that's entering at the same time as me is George Costanza from Seinfeld. And
I love that.
Super random, man. Seemingly random, but I guess it holds some part of my subconsciousness. And so anyway, we go through the doors, and there's this huge 60-foot high dive, like a pool of water. It kind of looks like almost like Niagara Falls style, like waterfalls, but they're like into a pool. And I'm like immediately pretty apprehensive about it, like not super stoked to jump down, but George immediately jumps, and I'm stalling, and there was like a urinal, so I use the urinal real quick, and I drop one of my guitar picks in there. Weird. And so then there's this attendant telling me like where to jump and blah blah blah, and I'm just stalling big time, and I peek over the edge, and I see someone that I used to go to school with at this school, and so basically it's just like a bunch of people that I knew were like waiting for me to jump, and I woke up right before doing that. And that was the dream. So
very, very cool.
Weird symbols for sure. Like, can't say I've definitely have not dreamt about Trey Anastasia. And if I've dreamt about George Costanza, it's been years.
Yeah.
Can't recall that I actually have.
George Costanza at some point. That's really cool. Definitely, a lot of symbolism there. So in this practice, I was taught to say that I am, or anyone that's listening to this dream, especially interpreting it, I would say that I am the secondary dreamer of this dream, because it came to me in the same way that it came to you, which is by surprise and full of mystery. So as the secondary dreamer of this dream, I would say that what I'm feeling right now is that the dreamer is really looking for an answer to something outside of themselves. Like, I see this returning to the school, especially when you're very young, looking for the year, because you're I sense that being the dreamer is looking for a sense of orientation. And I don't know if you have any connection to Trey Anastasia in particular, but it seems like there's a teacher that's teaching you something that you're not getting in the school because you had to leave the school to find him. And there's, again, like a loss of structure here, because you've gone from the school to someone who's literally telling you to improv and to not really go with the structure around you. And then you're going back to school and you're not really finding anything there. So we're going back to a high dive area. And the high dive area is highly symbolic in a lot of ways, and water is very symbolic in a lot of ways. But within the context of this dream, I'd say there's something people are expecting of you and you don't want to face it. And then there's the need to go to the urinal, which is to kind of shy away from the challenge at hand. And you did mention that there were people watching you, waiting for you to do this high dive. And the brain woke up before the high dive actually was taken because the pressure was not really dealt with. Like there was a lot of expectation and the brain didn't know how to resolve it. And there was kind of a reticence, which is reflective of the reticence of the consciousness to meet kind of the uncertainty and expectation to others. And I would probably close with that.
Wow, that feels pretty spot on, man. I have to say. The only thing I would add for the very end, why I woke up, and of course I don't believe in coincidence or anything, so I think this is just the way it happened. Not that it's in contrast to what you said, but literally I woke up because my partner was getting up and getting ready for work, and like that's what stirred me awake. It wasn't necessarily like I naturally woke up. Like I did feel in the dream that I was going to jump. Like it felt like it was going to happen. And I was like sort of like beginning to wake up a bit, with my partner ruffling around and starting to hear noise and stuff and whatever. Being slightly aware that I was dreaming. Like I was kind of looking forward to seeing myself do that exciting and scary thing. But alas, did not happen.
Yeah.
So I think that in and of itself is also symbolic, but
it is.
Yeah, no, that
and
felt,
that's interesting.
Yeah. That definitely felt resonant though, the way you very intuitively spoke about that. Yeah, that was cool.
Thank you. I'd be interested if you wanted to share how your interpretation of that dream went, like on your own, if you did an interpretation.
I didn't. Yeah, that was on the 14th, so it's been plenty of time, but I haven't worked with that dream. We could use that as the example, and I could give you an idea of how I would approach that with the dream interview, if you like, unless you had one that you wanted to get into. A dream of your own that we could do.
I didn't, so you could save me a little bit of pressure.
Okay, cool. Especially if we do end up using this for a podcast, getting into dream work gets real personal real quick. So
yeah, I could skirt that, but I do have it here. Like I won't take the easy out if you don't want me to, but I do have
No, I'm down. Yeah, no, literally. Either way.
All right, I'm gonna read this in the interest of reciprocation, because I can't let myself just get away too easily. All right.
Respect.
Actually, this dream I remember, I don't think I actually interpreted it, same as yours. And this was longer ago. So I am walking around a distorted version of New York City. I want to eat at a particular restaurant, but there is something I want. I notice a large parade float-like Buddha balloon is floating above a closed Thai restaurant in a football stadium. I want to eat with the huge Buddha balloon, so I walk onto the field and steal it. It's very large, though, and cumbersome to carry. Never mind that I felt guilty walking around with something so conspicuous in the first place. So I leave the balloon in a roofed area near the stadium entrance. I'm certain it won't float away in this location. I only hope someone will find it when they go to open the store tomorrow, as I don't want to have stolen it. As I eat at the place I mentioned earlier, I realize I likely would have been able to see the balloon from where I was sitting in the first place. And that's the end of the dream.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, that should be a good one to work through. Like you said, not too long, but definitely detailed. So what would you say would be the main symbols of that dream?
I think it's interesting that the balloon is Buddha shaped, which definitely is highly portentous, and it's definitely an image I work with a lot in my waking life as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that definitely stood out to me the most.
And there's irony in the fact that I'm stealing something that's supposed to be so holy.
Sure. Cool. Any other main symbols in that you would identify, or mostly just that?
It was sitting in the middle of a football field, which I don't have any particular connection to, but that's definitely a big part of it.
Yep.
And the last thing, this is bad dream recording, but I remember it as I'm writing it, is that I mentioned I left the balloon in a roofed area, which reminded me a lot of the New York train station.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, let's get maybe one or two other symbols to break down on this. Uh, if you don't have another immediately in mind, I thought maybe just that your first pursuit was to find something to eat. I think maybe eating
Oh,
would be a symbol.
yeah, sure.
Okay. Can you think of any other primary symbols, or should we go with that?
Um, I guess the restaurant was a Thai restaurant specifically.
Yeah, that did also stick out to me. Cool. Sweet. Let's go with those. All right. So what we're gonna do is as if I'm an alien or, a child or person that doesn't know anything about anything, I'm gonna ask you to define each term. Okay, and then we'll go from there. So Buddha. Like I know
Okay,
nothing
cool.
about anything. What is Buddha?
Buddha is, to the best of my knowledge, a being that lived 2,000 years ago that has been awakened to his true nature and understands the fundamental nature of reality and how to live in each moment as it is.
Cool. Nailed it. I'm going to read back what I wrote down. So, a being from 2,000 years ago, 2,000 plus years, an awakened one that has understood the fundamental aspects of reality and is able to live in insert whatever words you use that I didn't catch at the end. Do any of these words jog any idea, spark any idea as to anything in your life right now? Could be a person, a situation that you're dealing with, a part of your psyche, anything at all. Does that remind you of anything in your current life?
I guess I try to show up as the Buddha as best as possible in every moment, which I think is the goal of Buddhism, is to basically be as present as you can be. So I guess it's a symbol of like my high watermark of achievement, I guess.
Gotcha.
I could see it that way.
Gotcha. Could I summarize that or distill that down to like ideal version of yourself?
Yeah.
Does that feel appropriate? Okay. All right, so I'm going to call that ideal self. So football field, what's a football field?
Football field is a giant area where people play a particular kind of game called football.
We might want to also break down the word football, but I'll try it this way. Does giant area where people play football jog any idea in your brain of something that you would relate to your current life?
To my current life?
Anything in your current life situation? Giant
I want to say no.
field.
The first thing that comes to mind is just the football field for my high school, which is not in my present experience, but that's immediately what I think of when I think football field.
Gotcha. So let's break that down a little bit more then. How would you define football?
Football is a game. How would I define football? I don't know. It's a game people throw a ball to each other with and catch it and try to win.
So a giant area where people throw a ball at each other to try to win. Does that make you think of anything in your current life situation? Or is it just what it is?
On the surface, it's just what it is, but symbolically, we can actually get pretty deep here since something just came to me, is that I guess it can symbolically be thought of as kind of, I don't know how to describe this exactly, but I'm seeing an image about it. Kind of everybody looking to each other for validation for their own achievement, because I'm seeing like the ball being passed as like people throwing their sense of belonging to each other, which is maybe a stretch for football, but that's what's coming to me.
No, that's exactly what this process brings out. Yeah, I love that. That's super cool. Oh, yeah, I actually forgot to add that little disclaimer too before doing this process that like it's kind of a situation of like first thought, best thought, definitely a stream of consciousness type of thing. So yeah, whatever comes to you first, just throw it out there, even as weird as it may sound. Yeah, you just never know what thread it might pull. Okay, so I summarized that as looking for external validation. Does Does that feel
Yeah.
appropriate? So eat. What is eating?
Eating, to someone who's never heard of the term eating before, a human body requires energy, and there are certain substances that the human body can consume in order to maintain that energy and not die.
Cool. So human consumption to maintain energy and not die. Does that make you think of anything in your life? Does it remind you of anything? To consume, not to die. Human consumption.
Yeah,
So as to maintain energy.
definitely a large portion of my own consciousness goes to finding out day to day how I'm going to continue to eat and absorb and maintain. And yeah, it's very present in my experience. The thought of, where's the money coming from? Where's the food coming from? Where's the water? Where's the shelter coming from? Definitely a big framework of my waking life is around that.
Yeah, totally. Could we summarize that as saying, what do you think? Maintaining equilibrium? Maintenance in general?
Maintenance of healthy experience, I guess,
Okay.
maybe.
Maintaining health. All right. And then the last one, we had the Thai restaurant. What's a Thai restaurant?
Thai restaurant. Well, we can jump off from the point of food now that I've gotten this alien to understand food. So that stuff that gives you energy, there are different places that make it differently. And this Thai restaurant makes the food and serves it to you in a place that is particular to the region of our globe known as Thailand.
Okay. Does makes food in a Thai way remind you of anything in your life?
It may sound ridiculous, but Thailand is definitely very Buddhist connected, so which is why I guess the Buddha was out with the balloon there in the first place. So I guess tying all these things together, which is a very interesting way, would be maintaining energy through the perspective of a Buddhist lens, because it's food coming from a Buddhist source.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so actually, why don't you tell us the dream again and insert these new interpretations? Okay. So to recap, so Buddha, we were calling ideal self. Football field became looking for external validation. Eat is maintaining health, and Thai restaurant is maintaining health via the awakened way, if you will.
I already, before I even get back into this, I just want to say I love this process because it brought up like so much like tangential information that I was like, I would never have connected those things, but it's interesting that they're actually there. So I really do like this process.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
So I'm walking around in a distorted version of New York City. I want to eat. I want to acquire energy at a particular restaurant, but there is something I want. A large parade-like image of my ideal self is floating around above a closed Thai restaurant in a football stadium. So this balloon of my ideal self is floating above a place to get Buddhist energy in an arena of people looking for external validation. This is wild.
Yeah.
I want to eat with the huge, I want to eat with the balloon of the image of my ideal self in view. So I walk onto the external validation arena and I steal this image of my ideal self. It's very large, though, and cumbersome to carry. Never mind that I was feeling guilty walking around with something so conspicuous that I stole. So I leave the balloon, which is the image of my ideal self. I leave this image of my ideal self in a roofed area near the stadium entrance. I'm certain it won't float away in this location. I only hope someone will find it when they go to open the store tomorrow, so I haven't truly stolen it. As I acquire energy at the alternate place I mentioned earlier, I realized I likely would have been able to see the image of my ideal self from where I was sitting the whole time.
And clarifying question, what was the restaurant that you ended up at? Was that the Thai restaurant?
It wasn't the Thai restaurant. It was somewhere that I was about to, like, this is again just bad detailing, but I was about to eat somewhere, I think, and I wanted to see this balloon from where I was about to eat, and the Thai restaurant was closed. So I just wanted the balloon.
Gotcha. Okay. So if I were doing this process with myself or just on a deeper, more thorough level, I would also have made sure to include your location that you started in. So
Yeah.
a distorted version of New York City. That's a symbol. That's a primary symbol for sure. So
Right.
we definitely could have gone into that for a little bit more clarity. Um, and then yeah, so basically that is the process. So yeah, you're just identifying these main symbols and then making sense of it. So that's the process we're in now. We're gonna make some sense of why were those symbols interacting in the way that they were interacting, right? So does anything intuitively come up for you, or is there any more clarity to what the message of the dream is for you after sort of decoding those symbols?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I guess it is easy just to get lost on the face of things, but yeah, there's more clarity in the way I just walked through the world to begin with, which didn't seem like what this dream was about, but it definitely looks like using the symbols we established here that because I guess in waking life, I always have to acquire energy from somewhere like food or, a job for money or whatever it is. But I'm always trying to do it through the lens of truth and compassion. So I guess using these symbol sets, I'm kind of noticing, oh, when I walk around the football stadium, which is the arena of external validation, which I guess is a weird way to call the world. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm always trying to do it in moments. There's a portion of myself that might try to steal the ideal version, but that's not going to do anything. Yeah, it definitely illuminated a lot about this dream that I was kind of at a loss of, which is why I didn't interpret it because I was like, I don't know what's going on here.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that was the other one I was going to mention is steel. That's a definite symbol that we
Yeah.
could break into. Um, what's your intuitive thought on that? So you stealing your ideal image. What is that? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I guess if it's first thought, best thought, it feels like I can't get there on my own, so I have to cheat my way through the gate. I guess would be
Mm,
the thing. Is like, oh,
gotcha.
this seems really hard, so I might as well just go steal it.
Do you have an
But I
example
guess that's what
of
dreams are about. Because an example
yeah, like what would that look
of
like?
trying to
What,
steal,
yeah, what is
like in my
stealing your
life.
ideal? Yeah. What's a real life example of what that would look like?
Uh, I guess from the perspective of trying to show up as my best self would be faking it, or like, like quoting a philosopher or something, or like, like reciting what I know is probably the best thing, even though it's not what I'm feeling. That feels like a form of stealing my ideal self, is to like be phony holy, I guess.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The first thing that came to my mind, which I almost don't even want to say, is like the spiritual like jump cuts of like using psychedelics or whatever stuff like that, which I don't really believe that. I don't really think that those are like shortcuts that aren't actually like valuable. But that definitely has been
Yeah.
a expressed discredit of the psychedelic movement from I don't know who, but I've definitely heard that narrative of like, oh, it's cheating. That's like spiritual
Yeah.
cheating. You're not reaching
Interesting.
enlightenment. You're just like taking a drug or whatever. And like, yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would say that taking psychedelics is actually achieving enlightenment, but I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot of value to glimpsing a clearer light in that sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, even just you having brought that up, because there is definitely a portion of my consciousness that definitely does feel guilty about using psychedelics, because I'm like, well, the old monks didn't need it. So I'm just kind of trying to shortcut it because I'm not good enough. Like, that's not something I didn't even consider and I don't walk around with, but it definitely, when the tab meets the tongue, there's definitely that shadow of like, oh well, if I was really good, I wouldn't need this. But like overall, I really do agree that they're tools. They're not innately harmful, but there is that like narrative that you mentioned that definitely does exist.
I feel that shadow of guilt as well, in a certain sense, and I think it's just programming. Like, I don't think that there's anything really necessarily true about it. I think it's just part of the programming. And I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I don't know that monks weren't using entheogens as a part of their practice. You know what I mean? I mean, as like a Western American, just like looking at Buddhism through the lens and filters of the lens and filters that I see Buddhism through, you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not actually in India or in a Buddhist practicing culture, you know? I don't really know what it either was like or is like currently, you know?
Yeah, that's very true too.
I think there's probably stuffy, like fundamentalist Buddhists, just like there's stuffy fundamentalist any religious people. And I think there's probably more liberal, more progressive, open minded Buddhists and Hindus as well, you know what I mean? That do make that a part of their practice.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, I definitely use the Buddha as a symbol for that ideal self. Like, that the dream reveals that, but it's true. But I wouldn't consider myself like a practicing Buddhist. So it's not like I feel guilt about, not being like a great Buddhist or anything. So it's just, I guess, the kind of idea that, there were old masters that were able to do this on the natch. And I guess I feel like trying to shortcut it, but like I definitely don't have any like religious guilt or anything, because I don't associate with any religion really. But I just look at, I guess, what's that saying? Like, the finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. Like, I don't want to mistake the teachers or the teachings for the truth, but I think a lot of religions and old mystical teachings do have a way to show you the truth, but
Yeah, I
I don't
agree.
think getting caught up in their details is really the helpful way.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I'm finding that we're very similar in that way. I also like do see Buddha as an ideal self for sure, but I'm not a practicing Buddhist. And I guess
Yeah.
parts of my psyche feel maybe a little guilty about that, or I don't know if guilty is the right word, but like I'm aware that I could be a more disciplined person, practically
Right.
speaking and spiritually speaking. Um, Spiritually speaking, I don't know. I could go into a tangent about that, but for now, I'll keep going with my original point.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I do praise religion for, is that it is a particular set of disciplined steps. Especially Buddhism. It's more or less a like the first self-help philosophy, step-by-step self-help philosophy, than it is like a mythos in that way. It's not really a religion about story. It's a philosophy about letting go of story. You know what I mean? So I think that if it's,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, like followed to a T, like I trust that that is actually probably a reliable path to take. So in a certain sense, I recognize that, oh, well, I'm not really like super disciplined to any particular path other than like having compassion and gratitude for my Willy Wonka path. You know what I mean? My willy nilly path.
Yeah. No, that's definitely very well said. I feel pretty much the same. I don't think it's really very helpful to really hold every single thing that, like, any religious teaching, born into it or not, like, just think strictly like I must do it this way, this way, this way, or I'm bad, because most of the priests or monks or Zen masters or whoever are not doing it that way anyway. And I think the best ones are the ones that will admit that and just tell you, God is in your life anyway. Whatever source, the universe is in your life anyway, and you really can't go wrong or lose it. And in my view, the practice really, which is what the Buddha represents to me, is just to be present, because you don't actually need any teachings or intellect or anything. You just have to get out of your own way. And that's really what I put as the high watermark of that symbol to me, is just being able to get out of my own way so much that I can just accord with everything around me. And that doesn't like rely on being hung up on a particular doctrine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Super well said. I absolutely agree with that as well. And, you know, and that's like the beauty of having these kind of conversations too, is it helps me burn out my programming, you know, because that's just, those are thought programs, that's conditioning within my psyche. And, if it goes unexpressed or examined, you know, it just will continue to fester or stagnate or whatever it is doing, you know. But in a deeper truth, I do feel, A, what you just said, and B, just to expand upon it, that we're in an era of moving past the need for that particular degree of structure, or what I'll call like the age of the guru. You know, I think that the truth in all of the awakened masters or ascended masters that we look up to, you know, whether it be Siddhartha as the historical Buddha or Jesus as the historical Christ, or the other ones, you know, as much as we want to put them on pedestals and like the role models that we should be, you know, following their steps, they didn't do that. They didn't follow someone else's steps. They bloomed. They just discovered that they are divine, and they just lived divine, you know. I think then people just were like, oh, I dig that. Let's that guy seems to know what he's talking about. Maybe we should like worship what he says. You know. And I think that's where it gets messy real quick. Once we externalize our validation in that way, it becomes another football game. Game of passing the truth, you know.
Looking for the validation.
yeah, literally.
Yeah. It's a fantastic reminder, though, that you just gave, which is, I think I heard it this way, which is Buddha was not a Buddhist and Christ was not a Christian. Like they had their own path, they did their own thing, and then people looked at it and then like exactly like you just said, like, oh, like, wow, that is something that I can't do, but they did, so I'm going to laud them. But even their entire message was, don't worship or laud me because you can do this. Jesus said that, Buddha said that. All, like you said, all the others, like every other prophet that I can't name, pretty much had that as their main goal of communication, which is, you are as I am as you are. And I guess when you can't accept that, you externalize it. But the truth really is that they're all saying, look inside yourself.
Exactly. And I guess it's so hard to do that we create these mental gymnastics and create these organized ways of not doing that, of not just sitting down. And I mean, of course, and that's why I do almost romanticize Eastern religion in a way, particularly Buddhism, because it does seem that there is more of a practical practice within their religion where they really do practice meditation. You know, they really do practice yoga, stuff like that. Whereas like Christians really do practice what? Judging people. I mean, I hate to say that sounds judgmental of me, but you know what I mean? There is a level of service. Like they definitely, you know, put that as a high value of serving the community. But let's be honest, a lot of times it's kind of just virtue signaling. You know?
No, I know what you're getting at. Yeah, what I think of too when I think of the Christians, again, like not they have a good, like the intention I think is good, but the practice I think is far afield from what the message is. But like I think what the Christians do as a practice is kind of the inverse of what a lot of the Eastern things do, which is again externalize. Like when they go, they get the communion and the blood, like there's something outside of them, and they're told they have to go every Sunday to get this thing that they don't have because they need to get it every week to be, you know, to re-up their holiness. Like it's a practice of externalizing power. Whereas, like you said, the Easterns have like more of a fundamental practice of keeping power within, like doing yoga, doing meditation. So I guess that's why people that think in the way that we seem to think gravitate towards those practices, because they're more bringing center back within you as opposed to looking at like, you know, an image on a cross and saying like, that was it and it can never be you. Like the Easterns kind of do the opposite. Like Taoism and Buddhism is more like, you already have everything that you need. Just remember that every day.
100%. Yeah, and I will say that I try not to fall into the really easy mind trap of the grass is greener on the other side type of
Mhm.
thing. You know what I mean? Like I would imagine that there's probably young people on the other side of the globe that were brought up with Eastern religion that maybe romanticize Western religion,
Yeah.
in the sense of, let me frame it this way. I think that truth lies in the neutral center of most things. And since we sort of live in such an imbalanced system and culture, globally speaking, but
Yeah.
definitely in this country. Um, I think we're so far on this side of this pendulum, we just want to swing it all the way over there and be like, oh no, that's the thing. But then it's like,
Right.
for me personally, like I found a lot of truth and relief and resonance in Buddhism and Taoism in particular. That's still probably my favorite is Taoism, and I guess
Mhm.
the Western version of that would be like non-duality in general.
Yeah.
That feels the deepest to me. But practically speaking, yeah, I can definitely admit that that's led to what people call spiritual bypass. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
To the point where maybe I am less inclined to serve my community because I don't believe that I have to do that to be a valuable spiritual person or whatever it is. You know what I mean? And I think that there is like functional value in doing good things, of course. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know about. I like your point about the romanticizing things, like about the people brought up with Eastern traditions might romanticize Western, which I'm sure they do. And I guess what that would point to is kind of just I guess anybody can get lost when they're so deep within something. Like I don't know what like, you mentioned this earlier, and I didn't. I never even really thought of this, but I agree. I don't actually know what Buddhism or Taoism look like when they are practiced in their homelands. Like I have an idea, and I've read books and I've heard things, but I've never really witnessed like practicing Taoists and Buddhists. They might be like practicing Christians are here to someone who's read a lot about Christianity but never been to Alabama. Like it's a very different vibe from the book to the people. So it could very well be that people have been raised in a like a fifth generation Buddhist household that their parents have just lost the message. Like a lot of Christians here lose the message, and they might find something that Jesus said as inspiring as something Buddha said to you or I, which I just love that parallel. So it really is more about what's within, I think.
Yeah, and just listening and being self-honest to what legitimately resonates. Another point of that, which I wholeheartedly agree. I imagine that is the situation a lot of times. And I think part of one of the components of that is the idea of how do I want to say it? Discovering something for yourself. Like baptizing babies into a religion, that feels more culty than like, I don't know, a coming of age culture where, and I don't know anything really about this, but I have an idea of like maybe perhaps like indigenous cultures would have like coming of age celebrations where like people have a chance to like decide like do you actually feel the way that we do things in this culture? Do you want to be a part of this? And Christianity does have their version of that. Confirmation is one of their sacraments and stuff, or at least Catholicism. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's just something to be said for actually with our own firsthand experience finding something that resonates. And I think that's why so many people are gravitating towards psychedelics now, and why psychedelics have such actual legitimate power and value is because it's an avenue, it's a tool, it's a medicine for actually feeling the divine moment and the divine presence that is literally here all the time.
Yeah, perfectly said. Yeah, the felt presence of direct experience. Yeah, it's exactly that. Like Terence McKenna would say.
100%.
But there really is nothing. There's nothing more powerful than that because that's really where the action is. Like you can't not be where you are. But the more ideas the moment or the more philosophies you try to hang on your moment, It's just kind of the further away you get from your direct experience because you're kind of arguing for something that's not being directly experienced when what's directly experienced doesn't need words because it already just is. The more stories you try to build, the further away we get from that. And we're so involved in our own stories, and other people are so involved in their own stories that we don't even recognize what is a story. And I think enough psychedelics, or any amount of psychedelics really, for many people are just kind of, it's enough of a shock to get you out of the stories that you've been telling to be like, wow, I didn't even realize that that wasn't real. Because we're kind of in a moment in time where we're so far from understanding what truth is or even who we are as people or individuals or a nation or whatever. We don't know anything about our own identity, but neither does anybody else around us, so we have no clues. And if you don't have any discipline or any, like, I guess, natural inborn capacity to instantly awaken yourself, you know, psychedelics or any kind of medical intervention or pharmacological, I think was the Terence McKenna word. Any pharmacological intervention is greatly, greatly helpful. Not that they will give you the answer, but they give you the door to find the answer, I
Right.
think is the best way to put it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Really well said. Um, yeah, and I'm going to take this into a tangent at this point, or at least steer into a somewhat different topic about like AI and how we're really at the brink of a almost unfathomable like new era of humanity and the next we're birthing a species here, folks. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I mean, because I feel like you're on this level that like consciousness is consciousness and intelligence is intelligence. You want to say it's artificial, it's still, I don't know, I'm not saying it's necessarily self-aware. It could be.
Mm.
It has the potential of becoming self-aware. And then, who are we to say that like organic and analog awareness is different than digital awareness? You know what I mean? It's really just bringing up a lot of big questions. But my point of bringing that up is more so on the side of like, when we're looking at the world almost constantly through the lenses of these screens and stuff these days, we don't know what's real. The what we used to call deep fake. Now we just call it just normal AI doing its thing, whatever. As the like actors are being replaced by their AI like counterparts and stuff like that as we speak, all this crazy stuff. It's wild and it's almost maddening, and it is sort of like a Pandora's box that I think a lot of people are like maybe freaking out about, like getting exposed to, kind of in a classic psychedelic come up type of way. But I think the value that we could extract from it or learn through it is to accept the actual truth that life here as we know it is illusion, and that everything is story, and that facts aren't necessarily truth.
Mm.
And facts are much more fluid than we were raised to believe in the education system and through the mainstream media sources and everything like that, So, I mean, I'll leave it at that. But you see where I'm getting at with all that?
Oh yeah, yeah. The AI thing in particular is getting a little tricky, but it's definitely where we're going. Whether anybody likes it or not, it's here. It's happening. I guess we're gonna have to work with it one way or another. And it's definitely only going to evolve. I mean, already, like you're saying, actors are getting replaced. There's a big writer strike in Hollywood now because they're trying to replace a lot of jobs with like AI prompted things. So it's definitely going to get more complex, and we have our own ways, I guess, of judging, like, what is self-aware, what isn't. But at the point where things are algorithmically determining things and making their own judgments and decisions, like there becomes a threshold where I don't know we can say what is or isn't conscious at this point because we don't recognize it. Like there's definitely intelligence in animals and plants that we don't recognize, so we wouldn't really call them sentient, but they have an awareness we don't understand. In the same way, I think these computers, if they already don't, they're going to develop some sort of awareness we won't really be able to understand because it's not human awareness. So we're not going to be able to identify it through our human criteria. And I have no answers as to how we're going to tackle that problem when we get there, if we're not already there. But it seems to be more like we're going to have to live in harmony with what's coming rather than shy away from it, because it's here to stay, it looks like.
Hey man, I think you just nailed it with that word choice at the end. Like harmonizing with it truly is key. And like you mentioned earlier, if we come to the table with gratitude, we're already winning.
Yeah.
So I think a big key is to not approach this with how do we dominate. And I think that's kind of what my whole point was, is that the value in both psychedelic revolution and AI revolution is that it challenges our egocentrism,
Yeah.
whether that be on just a personal level of like, I believe that I'm this person. I believe that blah, 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 eat 5 grams dry in complete and total darkness and you find out.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. Same deal with AI. It's just we can no longer just go to the TV and expect that truth is going to be expressed through these news channels that are even literally categorized as entertainment in their cable categories and stuff like that. It's just anyway. So whatever. Obviously, there's going to be growing pains and everything to people coming to these realizations. But I think that once we can break through that initial ego grip of its expectation of reality being the solid thing that we've been brought up to believe, I think it's a homecoming in a certain sense. I think it will free us in a way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought too much about it because it's. I mean, I guess it's not that new anymore, but in my view, it's just happening very quickly. But it's new enough to me where I'm like, I don't even know how to dive into this. But the framework we're looking at it through now, I really like, because it's kind of just, again, being very present with the moment and what is, and whether you like it, whether you hate it, whether you don't understand it, and I think I'm all three at once. It's here. It's definitely a part of our world at this moment. And I guess it's up to everybody how they integrate that into their experience. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but pretending it's not here is just blatant ignorance, because it is. Whether you want to engage with it or not is definitely 100% up to every individual. But it's a part of our world now. It might just be a call to turn away from the screens, or it might be a challenge for us to really meet these things and in the same way that we kind of came into this world and don't know why we brought something into this world, and it's not going to understand why it's here. So it might be our challenge to be like proper dualism others for creating something we don't understand, but trying to help it out in this world, however we can do that. I guess there's a lot of ways to look at it, and I don't have any particularly strong certainty on any of them, but it's definitely something we're going to have to ask in the not too distant future.
Yeah, that's the thing. And, I guess we live in a sort of endless stream of irony. But on one hand, I feel, let me just put it bluntly, I would like to convince everyone of the idea that we need to stop being so domineering with our environment, but I want to dominate the predominant paradigm so that it becomes more harmonious, so it's of course I don't necessarily have that power to do that. What I do have the power to do is to be real with myself about how am I interacting in the world, am I harmonizing with the people and things in my immediate surrounding, that classic Jack Kornfield quote of, tend to the part of the garden that you can touch, and I do believe that will ripple outward, and that we do change the world by changing ourselves. And I think that we're entering a paradigm where that sentence doesn't sound crazy. I think if we begin to break down this egocentrism of our story being the only real story, when we realize the fluidity of nature and bring more lucidity into the dream. I guess basically what I'm talking about, and to relate it back to the dream talk, is that our default program on Earth right now as a person is to believe that this dream that we're in, this life, is the real reality. And just
right.
It's like being in a dream and not knowing that you're dreaming. and being so convinced on an emotional level to the point that you would defend it, and you would go mad if you start to wake from the dream, because you're like, no, that's the reality.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, can we bring some lucidity to this life, to this dream?
Yeah. You reminded me of a dream I had a long time ago, actually, which was, I'll sum up just the end of it, which was really the significant part, was basically the thrust of it was I was in like a prison line, or like with a group of prisoners, and we were all marching. We were told we were going to like go like in the mines, like digging for rocks or something. But I just had the intuitive understanding that we were marching towards our deaths. Like this was a death march. We were all getting killed. We weren't doing the thing. But right before the end of the dream, I didn't actually like go to the place to get killed, but I just woke up like in this line. But I've had a lot of lucid dreams in my past, so I just had this moment of lucidity. I was like, oh, this is just a dream. We can keep doing this walk. I'm going to wake up and be fine. And that was a really powerful dream, because I realized, oh, that's what this life is. That I'm going to meet my death, and I'm going to be like, oh no, this is it. This is the end. But hopefully I can have enough lucidity at the last moment to be like, oh no, this was just a dream. I'm going to wake up and be fine in 5 seconds. You know, like I think that's the goal, is just to really realize that. Like this is just one aspect of experience, just like a dream is an aspect of experience. And like you said, like the thinking this is the real reality, I think is really the only mistake, is that this is just one experience, and we don't have to cling to it any more or less tightly than we cling to every dream that passes in the night.
Absolutely.
So I really love that imagery and that you brought it up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really feel that. And it's a fractal experience, you know? So maybe at the end of life literally does become a dream. We do literally become awakened or lucid to the dream. I don't know. It's at that point where I probably should stop talking about it. But also we got Zoom pressuring me to end the conversation. So I do like to end episodes by just asking if there's anything in particular that you want to highlight about what we talked about, or anything that you didn't get a chance to say that you wanted to bring up. Maybe ideally like a reminder that we can bring into everyday life, like an action step or something like that. But whatever comes to mind.
Oh, love that. Yeah, and the more general part would just be definitely pay attention to your dreams, as from whatever you can remember from every night. I would recommend a dream journal, but even beyond that, you don't have to keep the dream journal. Just start to give any credence at all to your night dreams. And a practice I would like to invite everyone to try, which comes from this book that I'm reading, The Kabbalah of Light by Catherine Shainberg. It's about using waking dreams, or using imaginative practices in your everyday life. So it's just to close your eyes, count backwards from 3 to 1, and see the 1 tall, clear, and bright, and you breathe out 3 times. So breathe out once, see the 3, breathe out second time, see the 2, breathe out the third time, see the 1. And within this space, you can literally create a waking dream and inspire anything. So a quick exercise I'll run us through is, imagine yourself in your meadow, which is your perfect place. You're outside and the weather is nice and beautiful. Breathe out once and see an angel descend from the sky. See it hold out something, and you hold out your hand to it. Notice whether it's your right hand or your left hand. If it's your right hand, acknowledge that you're willing to receive something that you can work with right now. If it's your left hand, acknowledge that you don't feel worthy of an angel's gift, and switch it to your right hand. Breathe out and accept the angel's gift of light. Breathe out once and notice what the angel gave you. And breathe out once again and decide whether you'll keep it or discard it. And then breathe out and open your eyes. Did you see the angel give you anything?
Yeah.
What did it give you?
It was like just a generic like angel prop, which by the end of the dream I identified as being like one of those small harps.
Yeah, I mean, that was just like a quick exercise I just made up, but the idea is that you can prompt your imagination. You just prompt your imagination to work with something, and then the dream will inspire something that you didn't think of, which is why it's a dream and not a fantasy, because it wasn't something that you worked on. The dream just gives it to you. So you can just kind of utilize an intuitive practice to kind of just like do the breathe exercise 3, 2, 1, and do it anytime during the day when you're having a problem, and then acknowledge that you can imagine a solution to it, and it will be given to you. So I just want to invite everyone to do that during the day where it feels natural.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, thanks so much for having this conversation, man. I see this is about to bump us off, so you want to wrap here? Does that feel good?
Yeah, that
Cool.
sounds good. I super enjoyed talking to you. Let's
Yeah, man.
stay in touch for sure, and I'd
Absolutely.
love to do this again.
Let's do this again soon, for sure. Heck yeah. Sweet, man. Keep it flowing. Peace out, bro.
Yeah, be good.
I keep thinking that I'm waking up, but I'm still in a dream. It seems like it's going on forever. I can't get out of it, and I want to wake up for real. How do you really wake up?
If that's what you're thinking, I mean, you probably should. I mean, you know, if you can wake up, you should. Because, you know, someday, just wait as long as you want to eat, but it's easy. You know, just